All right, everyone. Happy Monday, and thanks so much for joining us tonight for my Monday Minute. I'm Dr. Monica Tillett, Doctor of Physical Therapy with New Direction Rehabilitation and Wellness. And I like to bring on different businesses and individuals who make an impact in our senior community. And Cyndee Crompton is here with Driver Rehab Services. She's the owner um, of this business, and she's going to tell us a little bit about what she does. With my company, we deal a lot with seniors and keeping them safe at home. And I often get the question about driving safety. And so I'm super excited that Cyndee is able to join us tonight. So thank you, Cyndee. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your company.
Yeah, you're welcome. Well, I'm happy to be with you. And I have some slides I'm going to just kind of zip through to keep you engaged and give a little bit more of the information. But I'm an occupational therapist, and I founded Driver Rehab Services in 1997. So I've been doing this for quite a while. And really, we work with all individuals that have a desire to be able to drive across a lifespan. So really starting with that teenager who might be 14 or 15 in driver's ed, but has special needs, maybe autism or cerebral palsy or spina bifida, up to injured drivers that may have incurred a stroke or a spinal cord injury, and then the aging client as well. And so we see really all across the lifespan of individuals, and our team is comprised mainly of occupational therapists. And just for, I'm talking mainly about the aging or senior driver today. And we know that for all of us, that driving really is that sense of freedom, the ability to navigate and enter your community and get to places you want to go independently. And for most people, they feel like that's kind of a rite of passage when they turn 16. But we know that sometimes things can occur that impact that ability to drive. And so why is there concern with the aging driver? Well, mainly senior citizens account for the fastest growing segment of our driving population. And we know that the first group of baby boomers turned 65 in 2011, which now is 10 years ago. So, I remember when we were looking forward ahead to when we were going to have the issue of the aging driver, but really we're here now. And so we know that seniors make up 9% of the nation's drivers. At that point back in 2011, and now it's up to about 30 million drivers. And just looking at the changes in population, that we look at, we have a drop in population between 2000 and 2020 for those 35 to 44, but a staggering increase in the population for those 56 and over. And so just even when we're looking at kind of the split of where our population is growing, we have a larger number of drivers on the road that fall into that age category. And this just shows it in a different type of graph where we're looking at across from 1900 until now, how we, in the yellow mark is where we are now, but just how there's a steady increase in the aging population in our lifespan. And in many ways, we can attribute that to great things. We're living longer, we're healthier, we're out there in the world a little bit more, but we want to really be out there safely and out there engaging in the community. And I think this one is interesting to me, that this is just who has driver's licenses by age. And I remember when I turned 16, I could not wait to get behind the wheel. But if we look at the 16 to 19-year-olds, 51.7% have licenses compared to even those 85 and older. There's a larger percentage of drivers 85 and older compared to the younger group. And then if you look at ages 70 to 84, 84.7%. So it's pretty significantly different in the number of people in that age group that desire and want to have a license. And so, another reason that we're continuing to look and help our seniors stay on the road as long as possible, as safe as possible. Now, this looks at different ages. So on the left side of the graph, we have the younger population, 16 to 19. On the right side, the older population. And this is looking at the blue line are those who are involved. Well, the black line is those who are involved in a crash. The blue line is those who are killed in the crash. So you can see that our young drivers without experience crash more often, but they are not usually fatal crashes. And with our aging population, if a crash occurs, it's more likely to be fatal. And so that's because we have maybe other compromised parts of our physical system or our visual system and things that just don't heal as readily or respond as readily. And so we want to prevent crashes across all ages, but really we want our seniors to avoid that crash because we know that it could be detrimental to their health and well-being to a greater extent even. But the other thing we know is that 90% of traffic crashes are driver error. And, you know, with our young drivers, it's that lack of experience, but with our aging drivers, there may be other things like medical conditions or beginning cognitive changes or changes in vision. And so it's important to consider that and think about how you as a senior or any age, how any of us are changing in our abilities and how that impacts our behind the wheel safety. So when we look at what are the common crashes for older drivers, there are these four: left turns, which require much more cognitive demand and visual scanning across far intersections, changing lanes or merges. So those are timing and really quick visual assessment, knowing where your vehicle's at in relationship to the other speed of other cars, rear-end collisions, and then novel or unfamiliar situations like roundabouts. And I'm gonna remember that because I'm gonna talk about that again in just a second. But some other things to consider is just that as driving has changed over the years. So maybe when you first got your license, you were in a different type of vehicle or in a rural community without the bustle and hustle of today's traffic. And so the demand is intensifying behind the wheel from when we learned. And so maybe some of those skills of needing to make a quick lane change or get your speed up with merging were just things that haven't had the same demand as they do now. And we're combining that with some deficiency in our skills, and that puts more risks together. And then just some of the ways that we may be changing. Vision can change, strength, movement. So physical vision, maybe there's increased medications that have side effects, other health conditions or endurance. And so all those can challenge driving safety. And really, so hopefully many of you out there are just doing great, and maybe you're working with Monica and you're staying flexible and out in the community, but it really is those things that can help keep you safe behind the wheel too. So there's research that shows that individuals who are at risk for falls are actually more at risk for motor vehicle crashes as well. So keeping your balance, keeping your stamina, your flexibility are all things that are really critical. And then activities that stimulate the brain. So I will tell folks, like, if you're doing a crossword puzzle, do it to a timer. Push yourself to increase the speed in which you make the decisions and scanning on that activity, because that's a skill you use when you're driving. And so often you can get a right answer, but is it the right answer fast enough to keep up with the moving traffic? And so some of those activities that may be leisure at home, you can just add a little self push behind it to help it extrapolate to safety behind the wheel. You know, thinking about your medications, any side effects, and going to the eye doctor on a regular basis to make sure your vision is good. And also consider things like driving during daylight. We know that for all of us as we age, our night vision decreases. Travel familiar routes, look at, are the streets well lit? Do those left intersections provide left turn arrows versus unprotected left turns? Assessing the parking lots that you use frequently and determining where easier parking may be and possibly where you can pull through on a parking spot. So don't do that in the angled parking spots, but on the straight parking spots, you can pull straight through and have an easier way to exit, having extra distance between you and your vehicle. So space is our friend. Keep a good space cushion around you. Don't fight with your spouse in the car. Don't play the music too loud, all those things that can lead to distractions. And then also begin to explore alternatives, because just even to get used to that now, there may not be a need for it, but if it becomes familiar, so what does public transportation look like? Do you feel comfortable using an Uber. Some of those things become alternatives if you find yourself in a situation like I need to go somewhere at night and I don't want to drive at night, or I'm driving in a more complex environment and gosh, it would feel great if I felt comfortable using these other alternative means. So beginning to proactively think about that can be very helpful. And then if there's still concern, maybe there's other things that affect a person and just they need really to know, am I really safe? And that's when someone is more referred to my company, is if a driver evaluation is recommended to determine if a person should or shouldn't drive, or if restrictions are needed. And those referrals can come from a physician, from family, from law enforcement. If sometimes there's been an accident or fender bender and law enforcement is recommending a driver evaluation. And then sometimes it's because the aging driver says, I really think I need it. And other times it might be because the Department of Motor Vehicle requires it. And a driver evaluation, a good driver evaluation, should include both a clinical assessment and the behind the wheel assessment. We want to know if there's problems seen behind the wheel, where's it coming from? Can it be helped? So if it's a problem that is affected by vision and we've identified it, it may be as simple as getting some remediation or corrective lenses to help that visual problem. But our goal is to help keep you on the road and keep you safe on the road or get you back on the road. So if the answer is not to drive, it's because there's a safety risk. And if the safety risk can be mitigated by an intervention, we want to help do that. So this is a quick video that I'm going to show you of one of my clients. It was talking about why she wanted and needed a driver evaluation.
I had asked you what you hope to accomplish during our time together today.
I just want to be verified that I am fit to be on the road. I don't want to take my grandchildren in the car and put them at risk. I mean, I don't want to put anybody at risk, but obviously grandchildren have a special place in your heart. But the thought that I might cause an accident or hurt somebody, if this evaluation shows that I am not capable of driving, I'm not fit for driving, so be it. But I also know that my daughter could possibly be the one to say, Mom, you can't drive, and then take the keys away. And that makes for a bad relationship with her. I don't want to put that on my daughter. I want an objective person saying, we've checked you out and we've noticed that this, and this is wrong, and therefore we can correct these or we cannot correct these. But whatever the outcome is, I'll know that I've done the best thing. So that's what's most important to me.
And in terms of your disability, what are the symptoms and things you've been struggling with?
I've been struggling with upper body strength issues, trying to turn the car. You know, you normally where you could pull out, it was easier. And, you know, you just pull out and swing back out into traffic or straight. An accident's an accident, I know, but if I could have prevented it, it would have been a more responsible thing to do. It's going, it gets like this, and like if I'm driving, and especially, heaven forbid, I try to reach over and do something, then it's even worse. It's very scary. I could take medications for the tremors, but those medications are going to compromise my driving skills anyway. So that's not always the solution. So it's kind of a catch-22 thing. And so I've just decided that I'm going to find out once and for all. The thought of losing my car keys is about the scariest thing I can think of, because I always joke with everybody that Heavenly Father picks somebody who's a control nut and then gives them a disease they can't control. Fortunately, I'm blessed that I have a support system, but for those who don't, that really would be overwhelmingly sad. So we'll figure this out and do whatever is best. And certainly I hope I can drive, but if I can't drive, well, then I'll stay at home and they'll bring the kids to me to spend the night.
So let me make sure I can pop back. So I think she does a nice job of explaining just all the things to consider, you know, not wanting to put the burden on her children, but also wanting to stay as active as she can, but wanting to make a wise decision. And the effects of medication, you take the medication and it maybe helps one problem, but creates another problem. So she was very wise in her thinking about this process. And unfortunately, she wasn't safe to continue to drive, but she also had identified already the reality of that and was in a place where getting the objective information was what helped her make that final decision. And as I talked about, we always do a clinical evaluation. I have video, but for the sake of time, I'm going to keep moving ahead, but where we look at all the components, physical, visual, and cognitive. And then this is also looking at fit and position in a car. And I kept this in here because I think this is an easy solution that sometimes gets overlooked, but just a simple seat cushion can help a person get adequate eye height to see and have better visual assessment of the environment. And the benefit of this specific wedge cushion is that it doesn't bring your knees up where they're interfering with the steering wheel or where it changes your feet's relationship to the gas and brake, but it brings the eye height up. And so that's why this is better than just sticking a pillow underneath you, because the pillow changes everything in the relationship to the pedals and often creates problems with reach. But this just brings up the eyes and the back of the bottom a little bit higher on the seat. And this is just an example of, the first picture where she's kind of seen barely over the wheel, and the second one where she's up over the wheel and where her knee clearance is still sufficient and not interfering with the wheel. So lots of simple things. And then there's folks out there that might have diabetic neuropathy and no longer be able to drive with their feet or a prosthetic limb. So we have all sorts of really fun and cool adaptive equipment today. Actually, I had two different aging drivers that are going to learn to drive with hand controls. And so we did an assessment that looked at their capacity, which hand control they preferred and liked best. We have up to 6 different types to try and get a feel for that. And so looking at all those things, and sometimes we need to transport a power wheelchair, and how do we independently do that? So we'll look at what are the ways to load and get that wheelchair with you out in the community. What's the best vehicle fit? So lots of things that way. Real quick on vision, we know that vision impacts 90% of decisions behind the wheel. And going back to the 4 accidents, I think this is the real critical point I wanted to make, but this is research that showed that the error made most frequently by drivers age 70 and older was inadequate surveillance, which included looking but not seeing and failing to look. So the importance of vision and visual scanning is just critical. And these skills, even think about when you're out taking a walk and, are you scanning your environment? I mean, I know I'm walking my son's puppy right now, and a lot of the times I'm looking down at my feet because we're on a gravel surface. But then when I put my head up and look and scan and check around me, that you can practice these skills and keep them active and, really valuable for you and your driving safety. Going to a grandchild's ball game and really scanning and watching and looking at the crowd, or even just people watching at the mall, are all things that help develop that good surveillance is needed for safe driving and to avoid those accidents. And then here's our big 4 for the visual changes with aging: cataracts, macular degeneration, glaucoma, and diabetes. So making sure we're seeing that eye care professional on a regular basis and keeping these big 4 at bay, or remediating if they need some type of intervention to help us. Because in the real world, vision is under high demand. I mean, I like this picture because this is trying to get to a client's home, and I don't know if you can see, but the roads, I went ahead one. The road sign is way up here on this top line, and I'm sitting here trying to figure out if I'm on the correct road or not. And it really took surveilling my environment and looking and scanning to find that street sign, which was in a peculiar place. But just the demands of vision and driving are real big. And then just to wrap it up, just the importance of cognition and decision making. And we're doing all of these things. We're having concentration, attention, we're flexible, we're learning directions, we're keeping a reminder of the rules of the road, we're keeping our self-control in check, all of these things to be safe. And we use a lot of different cognitive assessment tools to measure that. But we know that dementia does pose an increased risk for vehicle operation. And, there are sometimes when at the early stages of a dementia diagnosis that driving is okay, but there's ways that we talk about monitoring that and keeping a careful watch on progression of symptoms to help a person be safe as long as possible. And then the behind the wheel assessment is obviously where all those clinical skills come together to look at the person's actual functional performance behind the wheel and how they do in operating in all of these different areas. And sometimes the best answer is driving retirement. And sometimes it's restricted driving. I'm going to show you this video at the end because this is just a few seconds. Oh, no, I'm not going to because it won't open. Anyway, but I will say that, we make both recommendations for okay to continue driving, restricted driving, or time to retire from driving. But just like we retire from our work and other things, it's an important thing to consider and to understand that driving doesn't define our worth as a person. It doesn't define our value. Yes, it's not as convenient, and it is certainly nice to be able to drive. And we want people out there participating in life and society as long as possible, as safe as possible. But ultimately, we want that to be an informed decision based on true test measures and performance behind the wheel. And then just sometimes we do behind the wheel training. So if someone's learning adaptive controls, we will do training to get proficient in those controls to make sure we're safe. We call the Walmart parking lot our sign-off test because that's always a tough place to navigate. But if there is a cognitive diagnosis, that is not a good training client because those skills are typically declining and the memory component in incorporating the strategies and things that we're taught is just not usually there. So all of our evaluations and training come with a detailed report and recommendations or things are put together. This is just fee schedules. So a driver evaluation is usually $700. The $1,200 is more if we're in a wheelchair accessible van, which is a higher level of technology. And driver training is in the $120 to $150 range. And fittings is where we're getting vehicles equipped with adaptive equipment and helping to make sure that that's all set up. Unfortunately, private insurance does not cover the comprehensive driver evaluation. So our payer sources are typically workers' comp, vocational rehab, and independent living or private pay. And so just remember that driving is one of the most complex tasks we ever engage in. So be proactive. Think about your driving abilities before a problem arises. Be responsible. You are traveling on the road with other individuals who someone loves, and other people love you and want you to be safe. Be careful using safe driving strategies, but not overly cautious where you impose risk to the flow of traffic. And be assured, get a driver evaluation if you have a concern about your driver's safety. In conclusion, driving remains a high priority and a national safety issue. A thorough and complete evaluation leads to optimum results, and we're always balancing safety and independence. I know I talked fast and that was a lot, but I even cut out a lot. So hopefully that gives you a flavor, and we're always here to help and answer any questions if you have them. And I think I'll turn it back to Monica.
Yeah, that was great, Cyndee. You brought out so many great points in that presentation. And like you said, there's so much that comprehenses, everything that you look for, that it's hard to just kind of bring it all into a short presentation for us. But I thought that you did a really good job highlighting why it's important to be evaluated for driver safety. I thought that it was very interesting that you said that those older individuals who are at higher fall risk tend to be at risk for accidents while they're driving. And I just wanted to know, what other physical deficits do you see that contribute to those things, like, neck pain or range of motion, problems standing? What things are you seeing?
So cervical or neck range of motion is a huge one. So one of the most common first accidents for the aging driver is a backing accident. And I just actually deleted a whole set of slides on that because of time. But it really is that ability to assess behind you. You know, our backing cameras are helpful in giving an overall view. I think they're not, they shouldn't, you know, keep us from using good turning of our neck to check those blind spots, but it also is one of the areas that becomes real critical for safety behind the wheel, is that cervical rotation, to be able to check on backing or those lane changes. That, you know, that whole idea of inadequate surveillance or failing to look, you know, look but failing to see also can be contributed by physical limitations. So just kind of a quick glance, but without a full head turn to make sure that traffic is, you know, clear. And then arthritis, you know, even limitations in arm, rotator cuff, where the ability to navigate a top of the steering wheel with ease and with a hand over hand technique or even a hand underhand becomes compromised. Those lead to safety risks where someone is maybe creating a hazard by going too slowly through an intersection, and needing to get out and about. And one of the tests I always do is I ask folks if they can, I drop a keys on the floor of my clinic, and I say, you know, kind of throw them across the room and say, okay, show me that you can pick up your keys if they fall in the parking lot. And I had a terrible story where a gentleman who worked as a professor, it was summer school and the students were out and they had repaved the parking lot, and he was coming out to his car and he fell on new asphalt in the heat of the summer and got burns because he couldn't get up. And so it's that same idea. If you drop your keys, if you fell, would you be safe in navigating your community? So driving is, you know, being into the community isn't just physically operating the vehicle. It's, can you load your walker in your wheelchair? Can you, you know, make a safe transfer when you get to your location? Are you safe on that surface? You know, did you choose to go to the farmer's market and you're trying to walk up a little hill? Well, you know, all of those things are critical to being safe in the concept of driving. You know, we want you safe while you're driving, but we want you safe when you get to your destination as well.
Right. That's a great point, Cyndee, because a lot of times we think about just that tunnel vision as far as, can I drive? Can I turn the key? Can I, you know, make these turns and driving on the road? But like you said, once you get to your destination, are you able to negotiate getting in and out of the car, getting your walker in and out? So that's an excellent point. And another one that you brought out that it just really just stuck out to me was the cognition training that, you know, that they could do at home, the reaction time with that. Because a lot of times I myself, being a physical therapist, I just think of physical abilities sometimes, but forget about that reaction time that's needed in our cognitive ability. And so that was a really good point to bring out.
Yeah, and if you're savvy with your phone, there's so many games now that will, you know, you can even just search for games that look at, you know, cognitive flexibility or speed of processing. And there's also a website called Lumosity that offers brain games for individuals, and it's a subscription based, but it's kind of neat because it keeps track of you're competing against yourself to get better, and it keeps track of your capacity, and it does work on different skills like speed of processing or perceptual abilities. But that's one that I sometimes actually prescribe to individuals that I really want them to get a little quicker at the cognitive demands that then translate to increased safety behind the wheel.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, Cyndee, thank you again for joining us. That was just really informative. And I just encourage anyone, if you're watching this video and you see that it can be helpful to someone else, please share the video or write down the contact information for Cyndee's clinic, Driver Rehab Services, and reach out to them. I put the contact information on the post, and so when you call, you will be speaking with the office manager, Chantel, and she can answer all your questions, get you scheduled, and anything that you need, I'm sure she can handle. So again, if you have any questions, feel free to just call them directly, because that's going to be probably the best way for you to get your questions answered. Okay, so again, thank you, Cyndee, so much. And thank you everyone for joining. And I don't see any questions here on the Facebook post. So Cyndee, if I see something that I need to reach out to you for, I will definitely let you know.
Perfect.
Thank you. You guys have a great evening.